Trinity House was established in 1514 by Henry VIII to oversee the navigation of Britain's coastal waters and harbours, and hence was responsible for the construction of lighthouses. St. Mary's Island was a prime point, as it is said that between Tynemouth and Plymouth Harbour over 300 ships had been wrecked, so in the 1890s the elder brethren of Trinity House decided the lighthouse was to be built. The light was to replace a 200-year-old one at Tynemouth Priory that was so enveloped in smoke from the Tyne it could not be seen. Work began on the lighthouse foundations and the adjoining building in 1896. It took 2 years and cost £8,000, around $500,000 today, by a local firm of Tynemouth owned by John Miller. The first keepers were Principal Keeper H. Roberts, aged 52, and Assistant Keeper W.G. Monk. Both were transferred straight from the Tynemouth Light. It was not until February 1899 that their lodgings were complete, and the lighthouse was not painted till September 1900. It was painted white due to the dark cliffs behind it. If it were on right rocks, it would have been painted red and white like soda. The first all-paraffin wick lamp with an intensity of 121,500 candles was replaced by a vapor burner in 1917. The keepers' shifts were 8 hours during the day and 4 hours at night. There were 2 keepers in the summer and a third in winter. The weather had to be sampled every 3 hours a day, night from the balcony, and recorded in a log. There is a compass on the ceiling of the lamp room connected to the wind vane on top of the lighthouse for calculating wind direction. As soon as the light was put out at dawn, curtains had to be drawn around the lamp to stop the sunlight lighting the paraffin, likelihood increased by the lens. Although St. Mary's was a popular station with keepers because they could have their families with them and was so close to the mainland, life was still tough for the keepers. Water was brought over by boats and barrels, but his dried up in the summer, so water had to be filtered from the roofs. During the First World War, from 1914 to 1908, rifle ranges were built on the cliffs. 2 are still there, but one has fallen into the sea, and Feather's holiday camp was used as a POW camp and for some time after. Paddy's Column, named after the Irishman that built it, supposedly on the island, was built as a datum point for the Royal Artillery at Tynemouth Point to calibrate their guns. There is a similar one at Souder. The causeway was built in 1929 and rebuilt in 1965-66. During the Second World War, from 1939 until 1945, Mr. Crisp, the tenant of the cottage, was employed by the War Office as a coast guard and had to live on the island all year round. He had previously lived in Hartley during the winter. He was assisted by the 2 keepers, as the lighthouse was not always lit except when an order came through for it to be to allow safe passage of a convoy or to guide British planes along the coast. The lighthouse was also camouflaged, as it was so conspicuous and fenced off so public could not access the island. The lighthouse stayed in service for the next 86 years, of only being extinguished during the Second World War in case it attracted enemy bombers. It became electrified in 1977 and automated in 1982, one of the last to be modernized, and the original paraffin lamp was removed to Penzance, where it became part of the National Lighthouse Museum until it closed recently. In 1984, Trinity House decommissioned the lighthouse since it was no longer needed to modern navigation techniques. In November, the 4-ton lens was sold to a lighthouse in the American West Indies. North Tyneside Council launched an appeal to save it for the public's benefit and achieved.